So good afternoon. I am Anto Budiajo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something we do every Monday afternoon to discuss the advances in and related to smart buildings to improve our built environments. Just in case you're wondering who we are as panelists, we are listed on mondaylive.org. Get over there. And just to point out that views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization. And please do post questions and comments in the Zoom chat. We want to make this as interactive as possible. This slide deck is also available on mondaylive.org in case you want any of the links from it. Our focus this month is on system integration, and specifically the future of system integration. So we had a general discussion about where system integration is right now, last week, and we're going to continue on that theme, but really be talking about the business side of system integration. And we have a guest, Greg Lockhart, that we'll bring in once we start talking about this. But before that, hand it over to Ken. What's going on in your world?
Okay, we're real pleased with the reinvented site here. It seems to be working well. I was a bit concerned about how we would kind of achieve diversity and grow younger. I think was a big thing, but then I kind of dug back into some of the posts from the past there and metamorphosing me. Younger mentors give me wings, and that kind of reminded me that is something we've got to work harder at, getting these folks on our site. We had a bunch of pushes way back when, and the idea of getting younger people involved. The big thing is they bring with them their younger mentors, and that is huge. That keeps us growing and that keeps us current, and so that's a big issue. I was real pleased that Brad went over and he had a session with James Dice, and they basically are talking about decarbonization. And his pitch is that the data that we have the opportunity to redesign these buildings, and when we're going to electrification, it's very important that we know exactly what those buildings use. We no longer have to do theoretical calculations. We can actually use real-time data. And so all of a sudden that adds a lot of value to our data, which I think is important to all of the folks touching Monday Live and systems integrators as well. Carrie got a post. Carrie's my daughter in Australia. She got a post. She's one of those darn VCs that we're always talking about, those bad people that are ruining our industry. But I'm not so sure. If you can kind of see and go through her journey for the last 20 years, you get to see how that side kind of works. And both Brad and Carrie have been part of our reinvention, and I've basically listened to them a lot to try and find out what direction we should be going. So really pleased there. The other twist, I think, is that rather than reading these articles, they're both podcasts, and this seems to be a trend of the younger folks, is to basically move to podcasts rather than we tend to want to read stuff and touch it and feel it and maybe even print it. But that's not the connected folks. They're used to just starting a podcast and listening to it while they're doing something else. So anyway, interesting thing. We'll keep on with the reinvention and see where we end up. Back to you.
Thank you, Ken. I found a couple of things. One is an interesting article in VentureBeat about metaverse, and specifically why metaverse is important for infrastructure, sort of the link between the two. So I thought that is quite an interesting article. I think we've been talking about metaverse and things like digital twin and these sort of new concepts in the past year, and they just put an interesting sort of explanation, and they think about it as a two-way interaction between the natural world, meaning the physical world, and the digital world, meaning that we humans can jump into the virtual world like playing a game, or the virtual world can come to us by way of alerts and other sort of things, other ways, other methods. So you might want to take a read at that. The other thing that I found, which was kind of scary, is this article on the dark web price index. And this thing that you see here is basically a price list for things that you'd want maybe to buy on the dark web. So, for example, I've got it open here. You want to buy a premium quality malware or put a premium quality malware in a website somewhere. It's going to cost you $5,500 for 1,000 sites.
Oh, jeez.
And if you want to buy a what's the other one that I thought was kind of scary? Passports. You can buy passports on the dark web.
So, Anto,
Yes.
how do you actually get to the dark web?
I don't know. This is not an ad for the dark web. This is not a commercial for the dark web. This is just kind of, the world has gone kind of weird with this being able to do this kind of thing online, just like you go to Amazon and buy something.
So you're saying you've not been on the dark web?
I have not knowingly been on the dark web. Yeah, so anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Any other?
Just of our days with that, how it's just horrible, everything's spiraling down. Thank you, Anto.
Carol's just commented that it is dangerous to go to the dark web. I'm sure it is dangerous, especially when
It exists, the dark web. It sounds dangerous.
yes,
Ugh.
especially if people are watching it. Anyway, any other thoughts or things anybody want to bring up before we move on? Okay, hearing a no. So we're.
I'll say this, and let me tell you this about what the web, speaking of the web, the regular web, the light web, I don't know. I don't know if you guys have noticed that China is making a play for all of our digital services, but not setting up things like in China, but actually setting up distribution and all of that, and just, against Amazon and kicking our butts in keeping $6 pair of sneakers available to us and all that. It's amazing what they're doing with some of these websites in China, and they're actually setting up fulfillment here all across North America. And so I think that's an interesting thing that's happening with the web these days, which will keep us all fed in our cheap Chinese gear. And it's fascinating the way some of these websites and applications work to compete with Amazon and all the US-based stuff. Thought that was fascinating.
All right, so let's move on to system integration. So we're talking about the future of system integration, and I'm going to bring our guest on. Where is he? There he is. Greg Lockhart. So Greg, come and join us. Where are you? There he is. Hey, Greg. Good afternoon.
Hi,
Greg,
Hi, Greg. It's been a while.
it has, Tracy.
So Greg and I worked together, what, 20 years ago now?
25, maybe 20 years. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, something like that. Started at 25 and it ended at 20 years ago. You're now with Climatech, obviously a system integrator. Maybe I'm going to stop the share. Maybe we can start by, Greg, if you can sort of tell us your view of what's changed in the 25 years since we last sort of worked with each other, and just sort of take that journey.
So my first system integration project was American Dynamics Video, Duquesne Interface, Access Control, Lighting Control, and BAS. And it was black boxes and handmade RS-232 cables. And things have come a long way since those days. The advent of BACnet and LawnWorks technology changed a lot of that. Everything got a lot simpler after that. It didn't keep us awake at nights like it did back in the early days. The products that we installed, that Climatech installs, are mostly BACnet. We do a little LawnWorks, but not a whole lot. And then we interface to a lot of BACnet stuff. It's very common to go out on a job with packaged rooftop units, variable speed drives, lighting control panels, all with their own BACnet systems in them. And the integration there is commonplace. We do as much of that as we do standard control jobs. So it's changed quite a bit since then. Another thing that Climatech does very well is we integrate third-party systems. So we'll go out and take that JCI system, that Trane system, Siemens system, and pull it into whatever front end that we're installing, whether it's Tritium or Allerton or Distech or whatever. So we've got some options there that provide us with ways to do system integration for our customers that allow us to get in there and provide more and more ongoing service over time, develop those service agreements to maintain and operate those systems. And then over time, migrate those legacy systems out and install, 21st century hardware. So that's kind of the migration path for us, Anto.
So how would you characterize the sort of the business side of things, how things have evolved? And you're talking about a lot of the technology and the products are different.
It's opened a lot of doors. It's opened a lot of opportunities for us, rather than strictly going after our core product line, installing our core product lines on new installations or on legacy operations where you have to do a full cell replacement. Now we can go in and integrate those legacy systems. We can tie in those other opportunities. If it was a rooftop system and they're all BACnet, then it's either going to be the equipment manufacturer's front end, or it's going to be ours. And obviously we always want it to be ours. So we're going to go after those opportunities. We're going to go after those jobs where we can tie into those other systems, because the service opportunity is the real key. That's where we're placing our focus, is on getting that service opportunity to carry on that relationship with those customers.
So Greg, this is Steve Fegg. Nice to meet you.
Same here, Steve.
So if you could define service a little more broadly for us, is it strictly controls, or is it also the mechanical side?
We don't do mechanical service.
Okay.
No, the issue with mechanical service is that most of the contracting work that we do, we're working for mechanical contractors, and we don't want to alienate them by encroaching on service businesses that they have.
Okay. All right. So the service work is the control systems, And then, are you selling these as a yearly agreement, month to
We-
month, multi-year? How do you?
We've
what's that?
developed pretty much a standard for
Mhm.
our support agreements. And we're going to provide these services, which include, managing the network, making sure there's no problems, cleaning up any issues that they have, identifying temperatures that are out of range, all those type of typical service things. Preventive maintenance is what we're pursuing. And from that, we go out and develop that into the T&M, the corrective maintenance. And taking care of the customer that way is a big part of that business. Those agreements could be quarterly, they could be yearly, they could be monthly. It just depends on the size of the system and how long it takes us to get through that system. The goal is to get through everything in their system in 1 year time.
And then after that, it's just. So is there an ongoing from
We're
a
doing,
subscription basis or just T&M
we're doing that constantly. Every year, we're trying to renew those agreements.
agreements? Okay, so
And-
essentially annual agreements.
Annual, we try to sell the 3-year agreements just because there's more continuity there.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they're also wrapped up in that is, some type of software maintenance agreement, depending on the product that we've installed.
Makes sense.
And then, products have to be upgraded. That gets tied into it as well. Devices have to be replaced. It's just the typical wear and tear on a system,
Yep.
And through all of that, we're enhancing that customer relationship.
Greg, how much is what you would call maintenance work versus install work versus service work being, brake repair kind of work?
Between the brake repair and the maintenance work, it's about 50-50 of our total service.
So install is 50% and those two
No,
combined.
sorry, our support agreement business and our T&M business is about equal.
Okay.
Our install business is, 15 times bigger.
That makes sense.
And can you talk a little bit about sort of state of the art when it comes to those service agreements and maintenance in terms of the systems? So do you have systems that are remotely monitoring and you have visibility into those, or is everything sort of on a schedule and you show up on site and do your thing? Or, if you looked out in the market kind of as a whole, what's your best estimate as to how much is monitored versus non-monitored?
It really comes down to what the customer wants. For the most part, we're on site doing our system analysis. And usually the remote work we do is at the request of the customer when they have some failure. Have some network outage or some devices aren't working properly or some sequence thing isn't the way they expected it to be. That's when we'll do that remote monitor. And that's a service we're selling as well.
Okay, do you have access? So could you sit in your office and log in and have access to 10% of your systems that you have contracts for, or 50?
Yeah, we got 10 BAS offices and I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you, but a lot of them are tossy.
Which is not monitoring the data. That's the cyber part of it, right?
Well, it's
So-
actually providing us access to the data.
All right, so you are remoting in directly to the units through a VPN kind of a situation.
Right.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
I'm curious, Greg. By the way, 2.5 years, finally, I got a little shout out on Monday Live. Oh, thank you, man. Jeez, man. So I'm curious if people are asking you these days for services that go beyond that which you've just outlined? Is anyone saying, hey, can you guys do indoor air quality, fault detection, energy monitoring? Do you already do all that stuff? Are people starting to ask you, or do you have to go and try to convince people that that's a thing they should be thinking about?
Yes, and yes. We're pushing it, and people are asking for it.
Okay.
We came out with some solutions, third-party solutions that we delivered in addressing the IAQ over the last few years. We're looking at some new mechanical boxes that we're hoping to sell, and there's pretty much anything anybody needs. We have an in-house group that has developed some FDD solutions and have pushed those out to all of our branch offices. That's becoming more and more of a requirement. Really comes down to what that customer is looking for. The solutions are a challenge, mainly from a value proposition standpoint. You know, what's the value of that FDD solution that we provided that customer?
When you say value, do you mean how can we monetize that as an SI?
Yeah, basically, it's like this old marketing guy told me years ago. You know, you don't sell features, you sell benefits, and we don't do a good job of that.
Yeah. And then as a follow-up, I'm wondering how an SI, and I'm asking this just to get into the brain of an SI. We talk to three-man shops and large shops all the time. Do you sit around and sort of take stock or hey, we've been asked this many times for this, we ought to look at it? Or do you sit in the back room somewhere saying, man, we're hearing this? Kind of curious how an organization like yours decides on what services to start offering. And you know, you mentioned TossABox, you're already building up to this. Do you bring new technology in that can actually enable things 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road? Is that how you guys kind of think, or is it more reactionary?
This group that does a lot of the FDD development, they're kind of the cutting edge group within Climatech. And someone in some office will come up with an idea. Hey, we want to go do this. And a lot of times they'll go back to that group and say, hey, what do you think about this? And they might get a little more research done on it, might go pursue this different FDD solution. So yeah, we've got people in-house in each office that has a certain skill set that can pursue these things up to a limit. But if we want to push it out in the other offices, we're going to have to engage with that group and try to develop some standards to go with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the products that we're using right now has a lot of automated commissioning built into it. So we get the controllers from the factory, they're pre-programmed, we get them installed, we get them powered up, we get the addressing set on them, and then we can run the auto commissioning, and it will go through and stroke the equipment and check airflows and do all the things you expect a VAV box to do, and then generate a report that I can have by the time I get back home. So those are the kinds of technologies type things that we're looking for, things that are going to make it easier to install our systems. You know, this business, the cost is fairly well fixed in the equipment. Obviously, it's changed a lot with supply chain the last few years. But the biggest challenge is how much does it take to install it and make it work? It's that total install cost that is the thing that we're always trying to cheat down a little bit. My job within Climatech is looking for tools that will help us to improve efficiencies and drive down those costs. So we've got one tool that we use for network management, and it's got these key indicators that tell us when we've got communication problems, field devices aren't working, network wiring problems, all these 21 key indicators. We've got another tool that we're using for doing all of our design equipment, we've searched out the market for tools that are going to make us more efficient.
Hmm. Hmm.
What's on your wish list that currently is missing?
It's not something I have any control over. It's an accounting system. That's really a big item right now. The thing that's hurting us the most, as I mentioned before, is the supply chain. It's impacting more and more vendors. We got one vendor that was very reliable there for about a year, and now they've started to have problems. Chips are just getting harder and harder to come by.
If you, let me push at that a little bit more. If you open up your thinking, not just tools or systems or anything, is there a direction you wish the industry would go? Would you like to see things more interoperable or more open data or more plug and play replacements or anything like that? Is there, what's lacking out there in the community that really, if that were in place, the system integration business would be better, it'd be easier, more efficient, it would scale better, it would whatever you want to come up with that way?
I think there's some great technology out there. We did some systems with wireless, a lot of wireless controllers. And, we put it in and it worked fabulous. And then the customer moved in and all that network traffic just completely crashed the system. And we ended up going back in and putting a lot of repeaters in and things like that to solve that problem. And we did solve the problem. But what we were lacking was a tool to tell us about the health of that network, that wireless network. And when are we going to have problems and where are those problems going to be? We don't have those tools. Bluetooth is another great solution. But, you get two Bluetooth devices in the room together. How do you know which one you're connecting to? And, just some subtlety things there like that. Got a valve manufacturer that's released some new room sensors that use a different communication protocol that you can get right up next to, but I can't do anything with it. It doesn't connect to my system. So kind of at a loss there. So I'm hoping for their next generation to solve that problem.
So more interoperability, it sounds like, would be useful.
Yeah. Anything
More,
that's going to make
more
it,
wireless.
if it's going to make it easier for us to install the systems.
Yeah.
If I don't have to run cabling for communication and for sensors, then I'm going to save a lot of headaches. In California, especially on the projects that are controlled by the government, we're not allowed to send a technician on site. They have to be started up and commissioned by the union contractors. And it gets terribly expensive. It's the price we pay for doing business there. So if I can streamline the solution for getting these systems installed and operating, then all the better for us. We've got a tool now that we're using to do our checkouts. So we do checkout sheets on every piece of equipment. And now they can access that through SharePoint through this application that we're using to do the managing of projects.
Yeah.
So Greg, we were talking about the service contract, and Steve was asking you about that, and I think we got to the fact that it's basically an annual kind of cycle. Do you tend to put that in place or sell that when the project is done at the beginning, or is that something that has to be done once?
The first thing we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get it written into the contract documents, into the specification for the job. That at the end of the warranty, the contract that we sign to install the controls includes a 3-year support agreement. That's the goal, is to get that. Barring that, then we've got salespeople that are going to start visiting the customer site before the project is even completed and start building that relationship with the customer. Most of the projects that we're doing, especially the construction projects, those are not going to be direct to the owner. They're going to be to the contracting chain, which means we've got a separation there that we have to bridge. And the sooner we can get engaged with those guys, the better it's going to be for us to move on to that next step.
So Greg, Jim Lee here. We've had this conversation on this program many times as a follow-up to Anto's. You know, spanning that gap is a really hard thing to do because, as you said, 15 times the volume of your service business is your installation business, and that's coming from construction budgets through contractors. And you know, one of the big questions we've tossed out here is how, as an industry, are we going to span that gap and try to get budget dollars that heretofore don't exist on the customer side for things like analytics, things like cybersecurity going forward, things that are ongoing processes. What's your view on how that money's going to become available, or how we're going to educate owners to budget for that?
Other than more salespeople, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. You know, the cybersecurity issue. You know, it's the new Y2K, and you know, frankly, we should be leveraging that. Sorry, that's about all I got on that subject.
So you don't regard yourselves, Climatech, you plurally, as an MSI?
No,
Or
we're a system integrator. Do we
And
do
how
MSI
do you-
work? Yes.
how do you differentiate that? How
Well,
would you characterize the difference?
You know, we did a federal project in San Antonio not long ago. It's been about 3 years. And they would not let us bid the MSI position because we were doing the building automation side. And that was because they wanted to have that MSI be the person that's commissioning and ensuring that we're actually delivering our scope. You know, it's the fox in the hen house. They didn't want us checking our own work. So they push back, but in other cases they don't. So it really comes down to that contracting model as to whether or not we can pursue it. But there's MSI work out there right now that we're going after always. And you know, the big differentiator there is you've got to have that knowledge base within your organization to be able to support that level of integration and understanding systems, of being able to work with those other contractors. You know, we're really good on the technical side, but we hurt on the customer relations side. Well, we can't have that with that MSI. They have to be able to work with everybody that's on that job site. So it kind of requires a different skill set, people wise.
So, Greg, Dave Katz asked an interesting question, which is in some ways a seminal question. So Climatech, when they're interacting with customers, are your services focused, Dave asks, on purely monitoring, or are you also involved in monitoring and optimizing systems?
We do both. We do both. The FTD is heavily tilted towards the latter.
I learned from a guy named Steve Fay on this call that the difference between Industry 3.0 and Industry 4.0 is one is purely control, and one is control and optimization through data. So it's nice to see that that's not even a thing for you anymore, Greg. It's like, yeah, of course we do both. That's interesting.
Yep. FTD has a lot of value. Has a lot of value.
I would also ask, just out of curiosity, is your optimization of systems automatic, or is it, all right, we get results and we send a guy out in a truck?
Well, We may, or we may just have them remotely log in and make whatever adjustment it is, or it's, but at the end of the day, there's always going to be some kind of written recommendation that's built into the FDD that's going to go to the owner, so they know what it is that needs to be adjusted to improve that system.
When you're talking about improving performance, or what is the what are you seeing to be the motivation for it? Is it energy? Is it to have less maintenance, to indoor air quality, or performance of people or performance of the building? What's the driver?
Yeah, we talked about this 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when we released a new controller. And what it did, it ran an algorithm that told us if the system was lacking CFM for the VAV system. You know, we couldn't get enough air out to the boxes because the boxes were all going fully open. So we knew we had a problem back at the air handler. And, you know, we built all this stuff into the systems to get us customers aware of that. Well, that's a lot more streamlined and automated now with FDD.
So it's improving the performance of the system, is really what you're saying.
Yeah, that's the goal there, which is in turn going to improve our energy efficiency. And, you know, it may be that we've got a compressor that's not making its temperature and consistently not making its temperature. So we can flag that with a customer and they can go out there and address it before it fails. And before they have customers that are screaming at them because of they have lack of cooling. So it's a little bit of customer comfort and a little bit of energy savings.
Do you see customers talking about other types of performance improvement in terms of performance of their activities inside or in a retail, or performance of the business in the retail environment, the things that are not directly sort of related to the system or energy?
Yeah, I tell you, our retail stuff, the retail work we're doing is for the most part focused on energy. It's focused on.
I'm curious. Greg, let me ask you this. Remember, I'm an outsider here. If you sign an SLA with a college campus or whatever, is Climatech authorized to go in and make changes to optimize systems, or do they have to get everything approved by someone who's an employee of the company? How does that work? What's the relationship like? Are you using ML or AI or whatever to actually make changes, or do you have to get everything approved by the local company?
It really comes down to the customer as to the extent of those changes. For the most part, we've got a free rein to take care of those things. We're the controls professionals, and they expect us to provide them with optimized systems.
Got it.
Are you seeing or anticipating AI and ML to come into your daily?
Yeah, we're doing it. We're doing it with one of our manufacturers has released a new product that has AI built into it. And it also supports APIs. So we're able to do API level integration.
And since you touched on that point, we've talked about APIs a lot here on Monday Live. It sounded like that's not a normal thing. It sounded like this
It's
in
new.
this case. Right. So are you seeing an increasing amount of people wanting to integrate?
I think the market is driving that. I think the market is driving in that direction. APIs are becoming prevalent in so many different systems, except our accounting system. And I think that's where the need's coming from.
Nick on chat is asking what level of interest are you seeing in decarbonization, M&V, and what are you seeing about on that front on carbon generally?
You know, that is going to be driven by the projects that we pursue. You know, if the project is specifically calling for some kind of decarbonization effort, then we'll go pursue it. It's not an area that we're focused solely on. You know, it's in part, it's, you know, it's gold medaling in that core business. You know, you want to focus on the things that you're going to be the best at. And we know that that's not a big requirement for the work that we're doing. So we're not too heavily focused on that. You know, if there's a lead project, then we'll go do the lead, you know, but there has to be a clear market requirement for that.
And you're not seeing your customers asking for that, is what you're saying?
No.
at the moment.
No.
Is that the same for any kind of information that goes into ESG reporting?
Yeah, I haven't seen it. There's talk about it, but I haven't seen it.
Are
I'm
you
kinda curious
anticipating
to
it?
Pardon?
Are you anticipating it? Or?
I'm kind of curious as to what we're going to see in a year. You know, there's a lot of talk out there about the overreach of some of the ESG programs. That, you know, some are not saying good things about ESG, so kind of a wait and see. If there's a need to deliver a system that addresses some aspects of ESG, then of course we'll be glad to take care of it.
How are you controlling the data? And we're starting to see with decarbonization and electrification. As we start to redesign these things, there's going to be a need for design engineers to have access to the actual run data from the buildings. Do you perceive, like, does your company control that, or do you turn it back over to the owners, or is that
some of it is on premise and some of it is in the cloud. But it's depending on the system that we're using to deliver those analytics.
Are you seeing any hesitancy about the cloud?
No, I'm seeing a push to the cloud.
You're seeing a pull from your customers?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Greg. I like that.
What do you think is the thing that's driving the greatest opportunity for system integrators? If it doesn't sound like it's ESG, for instance, what's creating new opportunities for work for system integrators?
That's a good one, Tracy.
Mm.
You know, I think it's a little bit of everything we've talked about. I don't think there's any one thing. You know, the analytics are pretty key to what we're doing going forward. The technologies that we're delivering. I mean, we've got a business in New York that's doing high rise after high rise, and there's all kinds of new solutions they're putting in there that's not only helping us, but it's also helping the equipment guys, because they haven't done jobs with, you know, 5,000 controllers in a single building. So there's a lot of new opportunities out there in a lot of different areas. We're still grinding away on the K through 12 work. We still do a lot of that. It's all MSTP. The high rises are all going to be IP. So we cover a broad range. Hospitals are heavy with integration. We're doing some manufacturing plants. We're doing a little bit of everything.
So in places like hospitals, when you talk about integration, is that sort of integration with the enterprise system of the hospital kind of thing?
It could be something as simple as nurse call stations. It could be gas monitoring, things like that.
So, Greg, getting back to the FDD for a minute, do your customers understand the value of FDD, or because we've had a lot of conversations on Monday Live about the whole data analytics side of things, and often we end up saying, well, customers don't even know what it is, let alone understand what the value of it might be. Yet you seem to be having some good success selling it. Is that because you're sort of including it as a standard part of your offering without having to go through a lengthy explanation of why it's there? Or are you feel like you've been able to articulate the value to where your customers understand why they should pay for it?
You pretty much answered that, Steve. Internally, we struggle, teaching our salespeople what FDD is, and not so much what it is, but how to communicate the value.
Mhm.
I've been to these trade shows and I see these things, and we talk so much about delivering solutions that a small portion of our customer base actually want. So somehow we've got to get to a point where we're better at communicating the value of those solutions. Yeah, it's core to all of this.
Yeah, so you obviously understand the value of the FDD, but translating that into demand, whether it's push or pull, either way, it's been a struggle. You would agree?
People want to know, what's my ROI? It's either that, or I've got to do it for security reasons, or I've got to do it because of customer reasons. 10 years ago, every school district wanted to have an energy dashboard in their main lobby.
Right.
And there was no value in that.
Mhm.
It didn't deliver anything. And, customers turned them off and started using them to advertise in-house things. And it came down because the people just didn't care enough. There was no value to them as to what was being shown on those displays, those dashboards.
Mhm.
And it's a challenge. We've got to figure out how we can do that. FDD kind of communicates that. FDD gives us a way to go in and show value, but it's right now it's kind of expensive, and it comes down to the tagging.
Greg, I was wondering if we'd shift gears a little bit and have speak to the problem of getting skilled people to help you out, and have you been using augmented reality to take your best people and spread them wider throughout your networks, or are you doing any innovative stuff in that direction that you can maybe?
So we have 11 independent offices, which might as well be 11 different companies. And they don't spread things around because every single office is short-staffed. We don't have enough people in any offices. We've got some excellent training programs. We've got some employee retention things that we're working on. We're going at it, recruiting from lots of different angles, and yet we still got 10 temporary employees on the multiple job sites in one of our offices. I mean, those are the kind of challenges we're facing. We've got more work than we've got people, which goes back to the earlier comments I made about providing tools to make us more efficient with the way we do things.
Do you see augmented reality as part of that, to have like?
And I don't know what augmented reality is.
Well, like vision glasses and stuff that so somebody with the expertise can see from afar what the actual service person is dealing with and can help them out.
Well, and the easiest one might be you walk into a space and you point your phone around and it shows you the controllers and where the wiring's going and stuff like that. Almost like an X-ray kind of a thing.
That's interesting. I haven't heard of that.
Clearly
Yeah,
being asked for it then.
What's that?
I said, you're clearly not being asked for
No,
customers then.
no, it's like you mentioned before, you know, you gotta, we've got some late adopters in our business, and I've always done it a certain way, and it takes a lot of work to get them to shift to doing it the new way.
I think
So
one of the
I-
big benefits is the, you know, that it takes so much time and effort to get a person across town and on the roof of a building. That then he gets there and he doesn't have the tool or the expertise to actually fix the thing. If in fact he can communicate with somebody remotely and show them what he's dealing with, the expertise, and they can, between them, they can get it solved.
Yeah, that we're doing, Ken, that we've always done.
How do you do that? Just with cell phones?
Cell phone, it's a glorious thing. Little FaceTime, and
That's augmented reality of some sort.
Good question, Ken. We see that a lot in the industrial where they actually wear the glasses. So whatever that tech's looking at, the guy back at the home office is looking at. Pretty cool.
He basically turns the actual service person into almost like a drone. And we
Yep.
can go over there and take the cover off of that and take a look and measure the voltage there, and yeah. Yeah, it's also an excellent way, I think, to train. Or past the
Yeah.
potential of any.
I like that. Thank you.
So has the pandemic and the shift to work from home had any effect on the business? Swing, and I mean, is office space still growing or flat? What do you see with that?
You know, our big office markets are pretty flat. But we're not seeing a lot of activity there. And that's a real challenge. For the most part, everybody's gone back to work without any pushback. We're very much a job site workforce. We've got a few that obviously would rather work from home. They don't want to spend 2 hours driving across town to go to a job site when they can do that same work from their house. Which goes back to this need to put, you know, something like a Tossie box on every job site. So yeah, and you know, it's not always possible for someone to work at home. It may be a requirement for them to get out on the job site, in which case we lose those folks. We had lost some folks that just didn't want to make those trips across town.
I think Jim was maybe more asking about the market for commercial buildings, for offices, whether you're seeing that sort of dampening.
Yeah, it's flat. It's flat in several key markets for us right now.
Is new construction down?
In some key markets, yes. There's still a lot of hesitancy out there. Hesitancy to award contracts.
Do you see any trend towards doing residential conversions of those office buildings? Is that something that people are looking into yet?
I've heard talk, but I haven't seen any of it personally.
Right.
Wow.
Great. Any other questions from the panel? Looking at the.
Hey, so just to wrap up, Tracy, I want to talk about something you said. I want to see if there's something to tie together here. You said, hey, what are people asking for? Size rather. What are they implementing to get business to stay busy? That's a paraphrase, man. What we're seeing is there's not an SI we're talking to that's not like fully busy right now. And I'm wondering if there's maybe the same amount or a little bit more work there, but the tools available actually spread the ability for small and mid-size, from controls contractors to SIs, to do the work that previously only the big boys were doing. Wondering if everybody's so damn busy, because not everybody can almost do everything. Is that an insane statement?
I'll throw in my 2 cents and then I'd love to hear from Greg actually, but based on our conversations, I would say there's some truth to what you're saying. That some of the technology that is available is democratizing, for lack of a better word, the ability to address more and more sophisticated jobs by everybody. And maybe a differentiator is scale, right? Climate tech can take on the biggest project that you throw at it, but a little 1 or 2 man shop couldn't do a giant project, big
Scale might
campus
be
by
the
itself.
differentiator. Yeah.
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 Cool.
Is that true, Greg? Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would, Tracy.
Cool.
Makes sense.
And I bet that the volume of work, Greg, and you can fact check me on this, but the volume of work that you guys can do with a given set of resources is much higher now than it used to be in terms of servicing number of buildings, number of devices, and so forth. Is that?
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things, the programming, the putting in a network, getting it operating. That's so much easier than it was 20 years ago. You cannot imagine. It was a nightmare.
I can. I remember when we first met. It's about that time frame. So, yeah. Well, and now with the remote connectivity and so forth, think of just the travel time alone that a system integration company like Climate Tech is saving because of some of the things that they can do remotely that used to require a truck roll.
That's
right?
true. It's true.
Same reason people don't want to drive an hour to the office every day.
Yeah.
Right. That's 2 hours out of my day. I can be doing something more efficiently or having family time or whatever,
If you're someplace like LA, it might be, 3 hours one way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Matt just asked a question about data guys, data scientists and the likes. Does Climate Tech have any of those kinds of skills in-house?
There might be 1 or 2 folks out of 1,000, so I don't know.
But it's not something that.
No, we're all wearing a lot of hats. It's the nature of being an SI.
Right. Okay.
That's interesting. What is the right education set for a new hire? Let's say a young person just coming out of school. Are you looking for double E's, for computer science majors, for technicians out of trade schools, or what's the best
I would say the technicians out of trade schools are key to, the boots on the ground, and then the engineer types for a lot of the other stuff that we do. The project managers, the sales folks, those types of folks.
Okay, we need to bring this to a wrap. Anybody want to do a little recap?
Tracy?
Tracy?
I can try, sure. So first of all, thank you, Greg, for your time and your insight. A lot of us, I think, speculate about what goes on in your world, but it's always good to hear somebody from that world actually tell us what's going on. And I found it interesting. I thought you might come on here and say that things like ESG and cybersecurity and some of these other analytics and some of these other things are driving new business more than it sounded like. So that's an interesting thing that all of that hasn't trickled down to drive SI business yet, right? So
Sure.
A lot of room for improvement from the industry by the sounds of it. Hopefully that will help, drive a bigger pie for all of us involved, right? That's the goal. Getting things more interoperable sounds like something that you would like to see happen. That would make your job a little bit easier. And in general, you're looking for ways to make deployments more efficient and easier. So anyone who's listening who's in that industry, that's something to think about and focus on too. And it sounds like you're highly recommending Tossibox at every site too. So
Oh, maybe. I
no,
gotta
no
run.
commercials. Yeah, no commercials, but you did bring it up twice, so it's got to be a thing. So, and again, thanks for the time. I don't know if that's enough of a wrap for today,
That's
but
perfect. That's perfect, Tracy. Thank you.
Good.
That's-
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks everybody else for being here. And we'll get the video out tomorrow or the day after. Otherwise, have a great week, and we'll see you back next week. We'll continue this discussion on the future of system integration.
perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye
Thanks
all.
again,
Thank
Greg.
you. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Greg.
Bye.
Bye.